The council chamber was underground, carved from stone that had known darkness for 500 years, and Zara Voss stood before 12 vampires who wanted to kill the man she loved. She had never meant to fall for him. 3 months ago, she'd been a graduate student in medieval history at Columbia, living in a cramped apartment in Washington Heights, surviving on coffee and student loans. Then Professor Hawthorne had asked her to consult on a private collection of manuscripts, and she'd walked into a world she hadn't known existed. The collector was Wolfram Thorne, and he wasn't human. The first time she saw him, she thought he was the most beautiful and terrifying thing she'd ever witnessed. White hair that fell past his shoulders like spun moonlight, skin so pale it seemed to glow in the dim light of his library, eyes the color of winter storms. He moved like water, spoke like thunder, and when he'd looked at her that first night, she'd felt her entire world tilt sideways. Now she stood in the heart of the vampire court, deep beneath the streets of Manhattan, listening to 12 ancient creatures debate whether Wolfram should be executed. The chamber was circular, with columns of black marble rising toward a domed ceiling painted with stars that glowed with their own cold light. The council sat in high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle, each vampire draped in clothes that ranged from medieval robes to modern suits. At the center sat King Aurelius, the oldest of them all, his white hair braided with silver, his face sharp and ageless. Zara's hands were shaking, but she kept them clenched at her sides. Wolfram stood beside her, his jaw tight, his posture rigid. He'd told her not to come, had begged her to stay away, but she'd followed him through the hidden entrance behind the subway station, down the spiral stairs that seemed to descend forever into this chamber of judgment. "The law is clear," said Valerian, a vampire who looked barely 20 but spoke with the weight of centuries. His white hair was cropped short, his eyes black as oil. "Wolfram Thorne has broken the first covenant. He has revealed our existence to a human without sanction. The penalty is death." "She discovered it herself," Wolfram said, his voice steady despite the death sentence hanging over him. "I merely confirmed what she already knew." "A technicality," snapped Morgana, a female vampire draped in crimson silk, her white hair coiled like serpents around her head. "You should have used your influence to make her doubt. You should have erased her memory. Instead you kept her, brought her into your home, allowed her to learn our ways. You've compromised our security for your own selfish desire." Zara felt heat rise in her chest. "I'm not a security risk. I haven't told anyone. I would never." "Silence," King Aurelius said, and the word echoed through the chamber like a bell. "You were not given permission to speak, human." Wolfram moved slightly, positioning himself between Zara and the king. The gesture was subtle but unmistakable. Several of the council members noticed, their expressions darkening. "That," said Cassius, a vampire with white hair tied back in a warrior's knot, scars visible on his pale neck, "is precisely the problem. Wolfram has developed an attachment. He is compromised. He will choose her over our people, our laws, our safety." "I have given 500 years of service to this court," Wolfram said, and now there was steel in his voice. "I have hunted rogues, enforced our laws, protected our secrets with my blood and my blade. I have never wavered in my loyalty. Until now," Morgana said. "Until her." King Aurelius leaned forward, his ancient eyes studying Wolfram with an intensity that made Zara's skin prickle. "Do you deny the attachment, Wolfram Thorne?" The silence stretched. Zara could hear her own heartbeat loud in the stillness. She looked at Wolfram's profile, the sharp line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. She'd seen him fight once, when a rogue vampire had attacked them in Central Park. He'd moved like lightning, like violence made elegant, and afterward he'd held her with hands that trembled, checking her for injuries with a desperation that had made her chest ache. "No," Wolfram said quietly. "I do not deny it." The council erupted in murmurs. Zara felt the world tilt again, felt the weight of those words settle over her like a cloak. "Then you admit you are compromised," Valerian said. "I admit that I care for her. That does not make me a traitor." "It makes you a liability," Cassius said. "And the law is clear. When a vampire reveals our existence to a human, when that vampire becomes attached, both must be eliminated. The human's knowledge dies with them and the vampire's weakness is purged." Zara's breath caught. "Both?" King Aurelius nodded slowly. "The law was written after the great exposure of 1348, when a vampire named Lucian fell in love with a human woman and told her everything. She was captured by the church, tortured, and revealed all she knew. The resulting witch hunts killed 300 of our kind. We nearly went extinct. Since then, the law has been absolute. A human who knows our secrets cannot be allowed to live unless they are turned, and a vampire who reveals those secrets has betrayed us all." "Then turn me," Zara said immediately. "Problem solved." Wolfram's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. "No," she turned to him confused. "Why not? If that's the solution, You don't know what you're asking, he said, his voice rough. You don't understand what you'd be giving up. I understand that the alternative is both of us dying. You would lose your humanity, Zara, your warmth, your heartbeat, your ability to walk in sunlight, to taste real food, to grow old and die naturally. You would become a predator, driven by thirst, bound by instincts you can't imagine. You would have to drink blood to survive. Human blood. I would be with you, she said simply. Something flickered in his eyes, something that looked like pain and hope twisted together. But before he could respond, Morgana laughed, the sound cold and sharp. How touching, but turning her is not an option. She is not worthy of the gift. She has not proven herself, has not been vetted by the council. We do not turn humans simply because they stumble onto our secrets. If we did, our numbers would grow uncontrollably, and we would be discovered. Then what do you suggest? Wolfram asked, his voice dangerous now. You've already decided to kill us both. Why continue this farce of a trial? King Aurelius raised a hand and the council fell silent. The trial is no farce. We are deciding whether the law should be upheld or if there are extenuating circumstances that warrant mercy. And are there? Wolfram asked. In your 5,000 years, Aurelius, have you ever shown mercy in a case like this? The king's expression was unreadable. No. Zara felt ice slide down her spine. She looked around the chamber, at the 12 faces watching them with varying degrees of curiosity, disdain, and cold calculation. These were creatures who had lived for centuries, who had survived by being ruthless, by protecting their secrets above all else. What were 2 lives to them? What was love compared to their safety? But she thought of the last 3 months, of Wolfram teaching her about vampire history while they sat in his library surrounded by books that predated printing presses. She thought of the way he'd made her tea every morning, learning exactly how she liked it even though he couldn't taste it himself. She thought of the night she'd found him standing on his balcony in the rain, staring at the city, and when she'd asked what was wrong, he'd said, "I forget sometimes that beauty exists. Then you remind me." She thought of the first time he'd kissed her 2 weeks ago, after she'd translated a passage from a medieval manuscript that had baffled scholars for centuries. He'd looked at her like she'd hung the stars, and then his mouth had been on hers, cold and soft and desperate, and she'd felt something in her chest crack open. She loved him. It was insane, impossible, dangerous, but she loved him with an intensity that terrified her, and she would not watch him die. I have a question, Zara said, her voice stronger now. If the council decides to execute Wolfram, how will it be done? King Aurelius tilted his head, studying her. Why does this matter to you? Because I want to understand what I'm fighting against. A ripple of interest moved through the council. Cassius leaned forward, his scarred face intrigued. Fighting? You think you can fight us, little human? I think I can make you understand that killing him would be the greatest mistake this council ever makes. Morgana laughed again. Bold words from a creature who would die from a single blow. Zara, Wolfram said quietly, warning in his voice. Don't. But she stepped forward, away from his protective stance, moving closer to the council. Wolfram made a sound of frustration, but he didn't try to stop her. He knew her well enough by now to know it wouldn't work. You're right, Zara said, addressing the council directly. I'm human, I'm fragile. I'll be dead in 60 years even if you spare me tonight. I'm nothing compared to you. But I know things about Wolfram Thorne that you clearly don't. Things that matter. Such as? King Aurelius asked, and there was a hint of curiosity in his ancient voice. Such as the fact that he's been investigating the rogue attacks in Brooklyn for the last 6 months. That he's tracked them to a nest in Red Hook, a group of turned vampires who are being created without the council's approval. He has names, locations, evidence. He was planning to bring it to you next week once he had everything confirmed. The council exchanged glances. Valerian leaned forward. Is this true, Wolfram? Wolfram's jaw tightened. It's true, but that has nothing to do with, it has everything to do with it. Zara interrupted. You want to execute your best investigator, your most loyal enforcer because he fell in love. But the real threat to your security isn't me knowing about vampires. The real threat is whoever is creating rogues without permission. Whoever is breaking your laws deliberately, building an army in your own city. How do you know about this? Cassius demanded. Because I've been helping him research, Zara said. Medieval vampire law, historical precedents for rogue nests, patterns of unauthorized turnings throughout history. I've been useful. I could continue to be useful. Or you could be a spy, Morgana said. Gathering information to sell to vampire hunters, or to the human government. If I wanted to expose you, I would have done it already, Zara said. I could have gone to the media, to the police, anywhere, but I didn't. Because I understand what you are and I respect it. I'm not your enemy. But you are not our friend, King Aurelius said. You are a complication, a risk. and we have survived for millennia by eliminating risks. Zara took a breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This was it. This was the point where she either convinced them or failed, where she either saved Wolfram or lost everything. Then let me propose an alternative, she said. Test me. Give me a chance to prove I'm not a risk. Bind me with whatever magic or compulsion you use to keep your secrets. Make it so I physically cannot reveal what I know. I'll submit to it willingly. The council went silent. Wolfram moved beside her, tension radiating from him. Zara, no, you don't know what you're offering. Then explain it to me, she said, not taking her eyes off the king. It was Valerian who answered. Blood binding. A vampire would take your blood, and through it, they could create a compulsion that would prevent you from speaking about our kind to anyone not already aware of us. It's painful, invasive, and permanent, and it would create a connection between you and the vampire who binds you, allowing them to sense your emotions, your location, even your thoughts if they wished. That's a violation, Wolfram said, his voice hard. I won't allow it. It's not your choice, Zara said, finally turning to look at him. It's mine. His eyes were stormy, fierce, with an emotion she couldn't quite name. You would let another vampire into your mind? Into your blood? If it saves you, yes, and if I say I'm not worth it, then you'd be wrong. They stared at each other, the rest of the chamber fading away. Zara saw the war happening behind his eyes. The conflict between his desire to protect her and his understanding that she was trying to save him. She reached out, taking his cold hand in hers, feeling the supernatural strength contained in those fingers, strength that was always so carefully controlled around her. Let me do this, she said softly. Please. The binding wouldn't be enough, Cassius said, breaking the moment. Even with her silence guaranteed, she remains a liability. She could be captured, tortured. Vampires have ways of breaking through compulsions, given time and sufficient motivation. Then turn her, Zara said, her attention snapping back to the council. You said she wasn't worthy, but let me prove I am. Give me a trial, a test, whatever you require. I'll pass it. The trials for turning are not games, Morgana said. They are designed to break humans, to prove they have the strength to survive the transformation. Most candidates fail. Many die. I won't fail, Zara said. King Aurelius stood, and the movement silenced everyone. He was tall, taller than Wolfram, and when he moved down from his seat the air seemed to grow colder. He approached Zara slowly, his footsteps echoing on the stone floor. Wolfram tensed beside her, but he didn't interfere. The king stopped in front of her, so close she could see the patterns in his eyes, the silver threads in his white hair. He studied her face with an intensity that made her feel transparent, as if he could see every thought, every fear, every secret. You love him, Aurelius said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Zara said simply. Even knowing what he is, what he has done, the lives he has taken to sustain himself. Zara thought of the conversations she'd had with Wolfram about his nature, about the necessity of blood, about the humans who willingly served as donors to the vampire community in exchange for money, and the carefully monitored experience of the bite. She thought about the moral complexity of it, the way Wolfram struggled with what he was even after 5 centuries. I love him because of what he is, she said. Not in spite of it. He's honest about his nature. He doesn't pretend to be something he's not. And he tries, every day, to be more than just a predator. That's worth loving. Aurelius was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Wolfram. And you? Do you love her? Wolfram's voice was steady, clear, ringing through the chamber. More than I have loved anything in 500 years. Enough to turn her, to take her humanity, bind her to darkness, make her a killer? No, Wolfram said. I love her too much for that. Zara felt something twist in her chest. She'd known his hesitation, but hearing him say it so bluntly hurt more than she'd expected. But if the alternative is her death, Wolfram continued, then I will do what I must. I will turn her, teach her, protect her through the transition, and I will spend eternity trying to earn her forgiveness for it. King Aurelius looked between them, his ancient face unreadable. Then he returned to his seat, settling back into his chair, with a grace that spoke of countless centuries of practice. The council will vote, he said, first on whether Wolfram Thorne should be executed for breaking the first covenant. Those in favor? Zara's breath stopped. She watched as hands rose around the semicircle. Morgana's hand went up immediately, her expression cold. Cassius hesitated, then raised his. Valerian followed. 4 more vampires raised their hands, some reluctantly, some with clear conviction. 8 votes for execution. Those opposed? 3 hands rose. 4 vampires remained neutral. The council has voted, King Aurelius said. Wolfram Thorne is to be executed at dawn 3 days hence in accordance with our laws. The human, Zara Voss, will be held until the execution is complete, after which she will be granted a merciful death. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. 3 days. They had 3 days before Wolfram would be killed, before she would be killed. No, she said, her voice cutting through the chamber. No, you can't do this. The vote is final, Morgana said, satisfaction in her voice. Accept your fate with dignity, human. But Zara wasn't listening. She turned to King Aurelius, desperation making her bold. You said the trials would prove whether I'm worthy of turning. Let me take them now, before the execution. The trials take weeks, Valerian said. You have 3 days, then I'll take 3 days of trials. Condense them, make them harder if you have to. Just give me a chance. This is absurd, Morgana said. She's stalling, She's trying to save the man she loves, Cassius interrupted, his scarred face thoughtful. There's honor in that. Honor in a human? Morgana scoffed. Our laws were built on honor, Cassius said. It's why we're different from the rogues. If she's willing to face the trials, perhaps we should let her. What do we have to lose? And if she fails? Valerian asked. Then she dies in the trial instead of the execution chamber, Cassius said with a shrug. The end result is the same. King Aurelius was quiet, his eyes distant, as if considering something only he could see. Finally, he looked at Zara. The trials are meant to test a human's strength, willpower, and ability to control their darker impulses. They are designed to simulate the challenges of vampire existence. If you fail any trial, you die. If you succeed in all 3, you will be granted the transformation. But know this, the trials in 3 days will be exponentially more difficult than the standard version. You will be pushed beyond what any human has endured before. I don't care, Zara said. I'll do it. Zara, Wolfram said, his hand on her arm. This is suicide. The trials are brutal even with weeks to prepare. In 3 days you'll be dead if I don't try, she said, turning to face him. I can't lose you, Wolfram. I won't. His face was a mask of anguish. I can't watch you suffer. I can't watch you die trying to save me. Then we'll both survive, she said. Together. She saw the moment he realized he couldn't stop her, that her will was as strong as his own. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her, his cold cheek pressed against her hair. She felt him tremble, felt the weight of his fear for her. You're impossible, he whispered. I learned from the best, she whispered back. King Aurelius stood again. Very well. Zara Voss will undergo the 3 trials, condensed and intensified. She will have 3 days. If she survives and succeeds, she will be turned, and both she and Wolfram will be pardoned. If she fails, the original sentence stands. Wolfram will be executed, and Zara will die in the trial. And if she succeeds but decides she doesn't want to be turned? Valerian asked. Aurelius looked at Zara. Would you refuse the transformation after surviving the trials? Zara thought about it, about what Wolfram had said regarding losing her humanity. But then she thought about losing him, about a world where he didn't exist, where she couldn't hear his voice or feel his touch. The choice wasn't hard. No, she said. If I survive the trials, I want to be turned. I want to be with Wolfram. The king nodded. Then it is decided. The first trial begins tomorrow at sunset. Until then, both of you will be confined to the guest quarters. Guards will ensure you don't attempt to escape. We won't run, Wolfram said. No, Aurelius said, his ancient eyes knowing. I don't believe you will. The guards came forward, 4 vampires in dark clothing, their white hair gleaming in the cold light. They escorted Zara and Wolfram from the chamber, through winding corridors carved from stone, past rooms and halls that spoke of centuries of habitation. The vampire court beneath Manhattan was larger than Zara had imagined, a city within a city, hidden from the humans above. They were brought to a suite of rooms that would have been luxurious under different circumstances. High ceilings, antique furniture, walls hung with tapestries depicting vampire history. There was a bedroom, a sitting room, even a bathroom with an enormous marble tub, but the heavy door was locked behind them, and Zara could hear the guards taking position outside. The moment they were alone, Wolfram pulled her close again, his hands framing her face, his forehead pressed against hers. You shouldn't have done that, he said, his voice rough. You should have let them kill me and accepted memory erasure. You could have gone back to your life, your studies, your future. My future is with you, Zara said. Don't you understand that yet? You've known me for 3 months, Zara. 3 months against 23 years of your human life. How can you be sure? Because I know what I feel, she said. Because when I'm with you, I feel more alive than I ever have. Because you see me, really see me, in a way no one else ever has. Because when you told the council you loved me, I felt it in my bones. So yes, I'm sure. Are you? He kissed her then, and it was different from the careful kisses they'd shared before. This was desperate, hungry, full of fear and love and need. His hands were in her hair, his body pressed against hers, and she could feel the supernatural strength in him, the predator barely leashed. But even now, even in this moment of raw emotion, he was careful not to hurt her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she was breathing hard. He didn't need to breathe, he rested his forehead against hers again. I'm sure, he said. I've been sure since the night you laughed at one of my terrible jokes about medieval scholars, and I realized I wanted to hear that laugh for the rest of my existence. I'm sure, Zara. I've just been too afraid to admit it because I knew what it would mean. I knew I was putting you in danger just by loving you. Then we faced the danger together, she said. They spent the rest of the night talking, lying on the enormous bed, Wolfram telling her everything he could remember about the trials. He'd witnessed them several times over the centuries, had seen humans succeed and fail. The first trial is usually about pain tolerance, he explained, his fingers tracing patterns on her arm. Vampires experience pain differently than humans. We feel it, but we heal almost instantly, so we learn to endure it. New vampires often struggle because they're caught between human sensitivity and vampire resilience. The trial tests whether you can endure pain without breaking. What does that mean practically? Zara asked. I don't know exactly what they'll do to you, but it will hurt. And you'll have to stay conscious, stay coherent, prove you can think through the pain. Zara swallowed. She wasn't good with pain. She'd nearly passed out when she got her ears pierced, but she nodded. What's the second trial? Bloodlust. They'll starve you, exhaust you, then put you in a room with a human donor. You'll have to resist the urge to feed. It tests your self-control, your ability to master your instincts. But I'm not a vampire yet. I won't have bloodlust. They'll simulate it, probably through magic or drugs. I've seen them use a potion made from vampire blood that gives humans a temporary taste of the thirst. It's agonizing. And the third trial? Wolfram was quiet for a long moment. The third trial is the hardest. It's about sacrifice. They'll give you a choice, usually between saving yourself or saving someone else, between your humanity and your future. I've seen strong humans break in the third trial because they can't make the choice, or they make the wrong one. What's the right choice? Zara asked. That's the point. There is no right choice. They're testing whether you can live with the consequences of your decisions, whether you have the strength to make impossible choices and not let them destroy you. Zara was quiet, processing all of this. 3 trials in 3 days. Pain, bloodlust, sacrifice, and if she failed any of them she would die, and Wolfram would be executed. I'm sorry. Wolfram said quietly. I'm sorry I brought you into this world. I should have erased your memory that first night. I should have. If you had erased my memory, I would have lost you, Zara said. And that would have been worse than any trial. Don't apologize for loving me, Wolfram. Don't you dare. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Then I'll say this instead. I believe in you. I've seen your strength, your intelligence, your will. If anyone can survive these trials, it's you. Will you be there? She asked. During the trials? I don't know. They might allow me to watch, or they might keep me locked away so I can't interfere. But I'll be with you in spirit, always. They held each other as the hours passed, as the night gave way to day beyond the stone walls that surrounded them. Zara tried to sleep but couldn't, her mind racing with fear and determination. Wolfram told her stories from his long life, trying to distract her, and she listened to his voice, memorizing the cadence of it, the slight accent that came through when he was emotional. When sunset came again, the guards opened the door. A female vampire stood in the corridor, her white hair braided crown her head, her pale face serene. It's time for the first trial, she said. Come with me, Zara Voss. Wolfram stood, his jaw tight. I want to be there. That's not permitted, the vampire said. I don't care what's permitted. She's doing this to save me. I should be there. The vampire considered, then nodded. I'll ask the king, but if he denies it, you won't argue. They were escorted through the corridors again, deeper into the underground complex. Zara's heart was pounding, but she kept her chin up, her steps steady. She would not show fear. She would not give the council the satisfaction. They entered a large circular chamber with a sand-covered floor and rows of seats carved into the walls. The council sat in the upper rows, watching with expressions ranging from curious to hostile. King Aurelius sat in the center, his ancient face calm. In the middle of the chamber stood a stone table with metal restraints. Zara's stomach dropped, but she forced herself to keep walking. Wolfram was beside her, his hand brushing hers in a subtle gesture of support. Zara Voss, King Aurelius said, his voice echoing through the chamber. You have chosen to face the trials. The first trial is pain. You will be subjected to varying levels of physical suffering. You must remain conscious and coherent throughout. If you pass out, if you lose your ability to think and respond, you fail. If you fail, you die. Do you understand? I understand, Zara said, proud that her voice didn't shake. Wolfram Thorne, you may remain as a witness, but if you interfere in any way, the trial ends immediately and Zara fails. Do you understand? Wolfram's jaw was like iron. I understand, then begin. 2 vampires came forward, helping Zara onto the stone table. She lay down on the cold surface, and they secured the restraints around her wrists and ankles. The metal was cold against her skin. She looked up at the ceiling, at the carved patterns there, and tried to steady her breathing. One of the vampires, a male with white hair pulled back in a ponytail, held up a small silver knife. The blade gleamed in the torchlight. "We start simple," he said, "and escalate." The first cut was across her forearm, a shallow slice that burned like fire. Zara gasped, her body tensing, but she bit her lip and stayed quiet. The vampire made another cut, this one deeper, and she felt blood run warm down her skin. "State your full name," King Aurelius commanded. "Zara Elaine Voss," she said through gritted teeth. Another cut, this one on her other arm, then her shoulder, her thigh. The vampire worked methodically, each cut precise, each one burning. Zara felt tears leak from the corners of her eyes, felt her breath coming in short gasps, but she stayed conscious, stayed present. "What is the date of your birth?" "March 19th, 2003, she said, her voice strained. The cuts continued. They weren't deep enough to be life-threatening, but they hurt. God, they hurt. Zara felt her vision blur, felt nausea rise in her throat. She looked to the side and saw Wolfram standing at the edge of the chamber, his fists clenched, his face a mask of anguish. She focused on him, on the storm gray of his eyes, the white fall of his hair. She thought about the night he'd shown her his library, the reverence in his voice when he talked about books. She thought about the way he laughed, rare and surprised when she said something clever. She thought about the future they could have, the centuries they could spend together. The vampire with the knife paused, conferring with another. Then he returned with a different implement, something that looked like a metal rod with a glowing tip. "No," Wolfram said, his voice dangerous. "That's too much. She's human, she can't. If you interfere, she fails," King Aurelius reminded him. The vampire pressed the hot metal to Zara's side, and she screamed. The pain was unlike anything she'd ever felt, white-hot and all-consuming. Her back arched, her hands pulled against the restraints, and for a moment everything went gray. "Stay with us, Zara." The king's voice came from far away. "What year is it?" She couldn't think, couldn't breathe. The pain was everything, filling her entire world. "Zara," Wolfram's voice desperate. "Please, love, stay with me. What year is it?" Love. He'd called her love. She focused on that word, used it as an anchor, pulling herself back from the edge of unconsciousness. 2026, she gasped out. "It's 2026. Good," the king said. "Continue." The torture went on. Burns, cuts, pressure applied to painful points on her body. They broke her left pinky finger, and she nearly passed out from that. But Wolfram's voice kept calling her back, kept asking her questions, forcing her to think through the pain. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, the king raised his hand. "Enough. The first trial is complete." The vampires released her restraint and helped her sit up. Zara looked down at her body and saw blood and burns covering her skin. She felt dizzy, sick, her entire body screaming in pain. "You have 1 hour to heal before the second trial," the king said. "An hour?" Wolfram exploded. "She needs medical attention, time to recover." "She has 1 hour," the king repeated. "That is the nature of the condensed trial. Take her to the medical chamber." Zara tried to stand but couldn't. Wolfram was there immediately, lifting her gently into his arms, cradling her against his chest. She leaned into him, letting herself take comfort in his cold solidity, his strength. He carried her through the corridors to a room filled with medical equipment, both modern and ancient. A vampire healer, an elderly-looking male with kind eyes, began tending to her wounds, cleaning them, bandaging the worst of them. He set her broken finger with a quick, practiced motion that made her gasp. "You did well," the healer said quietly. "I've seen grown warriors break under less." "How much time?" Zara asked, her voice hoarse. 40 minutes until the second trial." She looked at Wolfram, who was standing by the window, his back to her, his shoulders rigid. She could see the tension in every line of his body. "Wolfram," she said softly. He turned and she saw the anguish on his face, the guilt. He crossed to her in 2 long strides, kneeling beside the medical table, taking her uninjured hand in both of his. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. You should never have had to endure that." "I should have stopped," she said, cutting him off. "I chose this, and I'd choose it again." "I'm okay, Wolfram. I'm still here." "You screamed," he said, and there were tears in his eyes, actual tears. She'd never seen him cry before. "I heard you scream, and I couldn't do anything. I just stood there like a coward while they hurt you." "You're not a coward. You're the bravest person I know, and I need you to stay strong because I need your strength. Can you do that for me?" He closed his eyes, took a breath he didn't need, then nodded. "I can do that. What do you need?" "Tell me about the second trial. Everything you know." For the next 30 minutes, while the healer finished bandaging her wounds, Wolfram explained everything he could remember about the bloodlust trial. The potion they would give her, the sensations she would feel, The strategies for resisting the urge to feed. It will feel like you're dying, he said. Like the only thing that can save you is blood. Your body will crave it on a cellular level. But you have to remember it's not real, you're not actually dying. It's a simulation, a test. Your mind is stronger than the craving. What if I can't resist? Zara asked. Then you feed on the donor and you fail the trial. Wolfram's face was grim. And the council executes you for lack of control. Zara nodded, trying to absorb this. Pain she could handle, she'd just proved that. But resisting a supernatural compulsion to feed? That was different. Too soon the guards returned. It was time for the second trial. They returned to the circular chamber. The council was still there, still watching. But now, in the center of the room, there was a chair and a small table with a vial of dark red liquid. Sit. King Aurelius commanded. Zara sat, every movement sending pain through her bandaged body. One of the vampires brought her the vial. Drink this, he said. All of it. Zara took the vial with shaking hands. The liquid inside was thick, almost black. It smelled like copper and something else, something that made her stomach turn. She glanced at Wolfram, who nodded encouragingly. Then she lifted the vial to her lips and drank. It was bitter and burned going down. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the pain hit. It started in her stomach, a cramping sensation like hunger, but worse. Then it spread, moving through her veins like fire. She doubled over, gasping, and felt something fundamental shift inside her. Her senses sharpened. She could hear every heartbeat in the room, could smell the blood pumping through human veins somewhere nearby. Bring in the donor, the king said. A door opened, and a young man walked in. He was maybe 25, dressed in simple clothes, his expression calm. He sat in a chair across from Zara, and she could hear his heartbeat, could smell his blood, and suddenly she understood. She was starving. Not just hungry, starving in a way she'd never experienced before. Her body was screaming for blood, for the life force pumping through the young man's veins. She could see his pulse in his neck, could imagine the taste of it, warm and sweet and sustaining. No, she whispered, pressing her hands to her stomach. No, 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 you will sit with the donor for 30 minutes, King Aurelius said. If you can resist feeding for that duration, you pass. If you attack him, you fail. 30 minutes. It had been 5 seconds and Zara was already shaking with the need to feed. The young man, the donor, sat calmly, his neck exposed, and she wanted to scream. Look at me, Wolfram said, his voice cutting through the haze of hunger. Zara, look at me. She forced her eyes to him, away from the donor. Wolfram's face was intense, focused entirely on her. Breathe, he said. I know it feels impossible, but breathe in and out, focus on my voice, she tried. She breathed in, breathed out, but all she could smell was blood. The donor's heartbeat was a drum in her ears, calling to her, promising relief from this agonizing hunger. Tell me about your research, Wolfram said. Tell me about the manuscript you were translating before we met. I can't, she gasped. I can't think. I need. You don't need it, Wolfram said firmly. Your body is lying to you. The hunger isn't real. Focus on the manuscript, Zara. What was it about? She closed her eyes, trying to remember, trying to think through the overwhelming need. It was a chronicle from 1347. About the Black Death. The scribe was a monk in Avignon. Good. What did he write about? The symptoms. The fear. He wrote about how the sick were abandoned, how families fell apart. Her voice was shaking, but talking helped, a little. He wrote about a girl who nursed her entire family and never got sick herself. He thought she was blessed by God. Maybe she was, Wolfram said. Maybe she was just like you, strong, stubborn, refusing to break even when everything around her was falling apart. Zara opened her eyes and looked at him. His face was proud, full of love and faith in her. She held on to that, used it as an anchor against the hunger. But the minutes dragged on. 15 minutes. 20. The hunger was getting worse, not better. Zara's hands were clawed on the arms of the chair, her whole body tensed with the effort of not moving, not attacking, not giving in. The donor shifted slightly, and the movement drew her attention. She looked at his neck, saw the pulse there, and felt her control slip. She was moving before she realized it, leaning forward, reaching for him. Zara! Wolfram's voice cracked like a whip. Stop! She froze. Her hand inches from the donor's arm. She was panting, shaking, tears streaming down her face. I can't, she sobbed. Wolfram, I can't do this. It hurts too much. Yes, you can, he said, and his voice was gentler now, full of love. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You can do this. Just a few more minutes, love. Just breathe. She pulled her hand back, pressed it against her chest, felt her heart racing. The donor was watching her with calm eyes, no fear. He'd done this before, she realized. He'd sat with newly turned vampires, with humans undergoing trials. He understood what she was going through. Almost there, Wolfram said. You're almost there, Zara. I'm so proud of you. 25 minutes. 28. Zara counted the seconds in her head, focused on the numbers, on breathing, on anything except the hunger. 30 minutes, King Aurelius announced. The trial is complete. The moment the words left his mouth, the hunger vanished. 1 second Zara was starving, the next she was just exhausted and sore. She slumped in the chair, gasping with relief. The effects of the potion last exactly 30 minutes, the king said. You have passed the second trial, Zara Voss. You will have until tomorrow at sunset to rest before the third and final trial. Zara nodded, unable to speak. The donor stood, gave her a small, respectful bow and left. Wolfram was beside her immediately, helping her stand, supporting her weight. You did it, he said, his voice full of wonder and pride. You actually did it. 2 down, she whispered. 1 to go. They returned to their quarters, and this time Zara did sleep, crashing into unconsciousness the moment she lay down. When she woke, it was late afternoon, and Wolfram was sitting beside the bed, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. How long did I sleep, she asked. 16 hours, he said. I was starting to worry you wouldn't wake up in time. She sat up, wincing at the pain from her injuries. The bandages were still in place, spotted with blood. How much time until the third trial? 3 hours. 3 hours until the final test. 3 hours until she either earned the right to be turned, to be with Wolfram, or failed and died. Tell me about the third trial, she said. Everything you know. Wolfram was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, the third trial is different for everyone. It's tailored to the individual, designed to test their specific weaknesses and values. I don't know what they'll do to you, Zara. I just know it will ask you to make a choice you don't want to make. What kind of choice? A sacrifice. Something that cost you deeply. They need to know you can live with the consequences of being a vampire, that you won't break under the moral weight of what we are. Zara thought about this. What would they ask her to sacrifice? Her humanity, obviously. But she'd already committed to that. Her morals? Her values? Someone she loved? Whatever they ask, she said slowly. I'll do it. I'm not coming this far to fail now. Wolfram took her hand, kissed her knuckles gently. I know you will. But I need you to promise me something. What? If the choice is between your life and mine, you choose your life. You don't sacrifice yourself for me. Promise me, Zara. She looked at him, at the fear in his eyes, and shook her head. I can't promise that. Zara, no. Don't ask me to promise I won't save you. That's not fair. And it's not fair for me to watch you die. Wolfram's voice rose, emotion cracking through his control. I've lived 500 years, Zara. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've lost everyone I ever cared about to time and violence and the simple fragility of human life. I thought I was beyond this, beyond caring, beyond love. Then you walked into my library with your questions about medieval manuscripts and your terrible coffee habit and your smile, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to hope. You gave me that. You gave me hope for the first time in centuries, so don't ask me to stand by and watch you die. I can't do it. Zara stood, moved to him, cupped his face in her hands. Then trust me to make the right choice. Trust that I know what I'm doing. Can you do that? He closed his eyes, leaned into her touch. I don't have a choice, do I? No, she said softly. You really don't. They spent the remaining time talking about simpler things, trying to distract themselves from what was coming. Wolfram told her about his childhood in Austria in the 1500s, about learning to read Latin from monks, about the plague that had killed his family and left him alone, about the vampire who had found him dying in the street and offered him a choice, death or transformation. I chose life, he said, or what passes for life among our kind. I've never regretted it, not really. But I've always wondered what I might have been if I'd stayed human. If I'd had a family, children, a normal life, do you still want those things? Zara asked. I want you, he said simply. However, I can have you. For however long fate allows. When the guards came for the third time, Zara was as ready as she could be. Her wounds still ached, her body was exhausted, but her mind was clear. She would face whatever came next. She would survive. The circular chamber was different this time. The council sat in their seats, but the center of the room was empty except for King Aurelius standing alone in the sand. Zara Voss, he said as she approached. You have passed 2 trials. This is the third and final test. It is unique to you, designed to measure your understanding of sacrifice and consequence. I'm ready, Zara said. The king gestured and another door opened. 2 vampires entered, dragging someone between them. Zara's heart stopped. It was her mother. Rebecca Voss looked terrified. Her eyes wide, bruises on her arms where the vampires held her. She was crying, and when she saw Zara, she cried out, Zara, oh God, Zara, what's happening? Where are we? Zara took a step forward, but Wolfram's hand caught her arm. She looked at him, saw the horror on his face. No, he said quietly, they wouldn't, but they had. King Aurelius's expression was calm, unmoved by Rebecca's fear. Your mother was taken from her home this morning, the king said. She is here as part of your trial. Here is your choice, Zara Voss. We will turn you as promised if you pass this trial. You will be granted immortality, power, and the chance to spend eternity with Wolfram Thorne. But the price is your mother's memory. She will have every memory of you erased. She will not remember giving birth to you, raising you, loving you. You will cease to exist in her mind. In return, she will be safely returned to her home with a fabricated story to explain your absence from her life. Zara felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. She looked at her mother, at the woman who had raised her alone after her father died, who had worked 2 jobs to put her through college, who called every Sunday just to hear her voice. No, Zara said. There has to be another way. There is, King Aurelius said. You can refuse the trial, refuse the transformation. We will return your mother unharmed, her memories intact. And then we will execute both you and Wolfram for breaking our laws. That's not a choice, Wolfram said, his voice hard. That's a trap. It's a test. The king replied. What are you willing to sacrifice, Zara Voss? Your mother's love and memories, or your life and Wolfram's? Rebecca was still crying, still calling Zara's name. Zara wanted to go to her, to comfort her, but the vampires held her firmly. You have 10 minutes to decide, the king said. Zara's mind was racing. There had to be a way out of this, some logical solution they were missing. But what? If she chose to save herself and Wolfram, her mother would forget her. 23 years of love and memories, gone. Rebecca would wake up in her home believing she'd never had a child, that her life had gone a different way. She'd be given a false identity, false memories. She'd never grieve for Zara because she wouldn't know Zara had existed. But if Zara refused, both she and Wolfram would die. And what would happen to her mother then? Would the council erase her memories anyway? Would they kill her too? What happens to my mother if I refuse? Zara asked. If Wolfram and I die, she will be released with her memories erased, the king said. She will forget you regardless. The only question is whether you live or die. So it wasn't a real choice at all. Her mother would lose her memories either way. The only variable was whether Zara survived. This is monstrous, Wolfram said. Even for us, this is cruel. It's necessary, Morgana said from her seat. She needs to understand what being a vampire means. We all make sacrifices. We all lose our human families, one way or another. She needs to prove she can bear that loss. Zara looked at her mother again, saw the fear and confusion on her face. She thought about every birthday, every scraped knee kissed better, every late-night conversation about boys and school and dreams. She thought about the day her father died, how her mother had held her and promised everything would be okay, how she'd kept that promise for 15 years. And she thought about Wolfram, about the life they could have together. Centuries of learning, exploring, loving. She thought about waking up as a vampire, strong and fast and eternal. She thought about standing beside Wolfram as an equal, not a fragile human he had to constantly protect. Can I talk to her? Zara asked. Before I decide, King Aurelius considered then nodded. You have 5 minutes. The vampires released Rebecca and she ran to Zara, throwing her arms around her. What's happening? Who are these people? Why did they take me? Zara held her mother tight, breathing in her familiar scent, feeling the warmth of her human body. Mom, listen to me. I need you to trust me, okay? I'm going to be fine. Everything is going to be fine. How can you say that? These people, they're not human. I saw things, Zara, things that aren't possible. I know, and I'm sorry you got dragged into this. But I need you to know something. I love you. I love you so much. And you've been the best mother anyone could ask for. You gave me everything. You made me strong enough to face this. Rebecca pulled back, looking at her daughter's face, seeing the bruises and bandages. What did they do to you? Oh God, you're hurt. I'm okay, I promise. But Mom, I need you to forgive me for what's about to happen. I need you to know that I didn't have a choice. What are you talking about? Zara kissed her mother's forehead, her cheeks, her hands. She memorized every detail of her face, knowing this was the last time Rebecca would look at her with recognition and love. I love you, Zara said again. Always. Time's up, King Aurelius said. The vampires came forward, pulling Rebecca away. She was crying again, calling for Zara, and it took everything Zara had not to scream. Your choice, the king demanded. Zara looked at Wolfram. He was watching her with anguished eyes, and she saw that he would support whatever she decided. If she chose to refuse, he would die with her without complaint. If she chose to sacrifice her mother's memories, he would help her through the grief. But there was really only one choice, because if she died, Wolfram died, and she couldn't let that happen. I choose transformation, Zara said, her voice breaking. I choose to live, erase my mother's memories. No, Rebecca screamed. Zara, what are you saying? Don't let them do this. But it was already happening. One of the vampires placed his hands on Rebecca's temples, and a soft glow emanated from his palms. Rebecca's eyes went distant, unfocused. The screaming stopped. After a moment she blinked, looking around in confusion. Where am I? She asked. How did I get here? She looked right at Zara without recognition. There was no love in her eyes, no memory of the girl she'd raised. Just polite confusion at the strangers around her. "You were in a minor car accident," one of the vampires said smoothly. "We brought you to the hospital. You're fine, just a bit disoriented. We'll drive you home." "Oh," Rebecca said, "thank you." They led her away and she went without protest, without looking back at Zara. And just like that, Zara's mother was gone. Not dead, but gone just the same. Zara felt something inside her chest crack open. She made a sound, half sob, half gasp, and then Wolfram was there, catching her as her legs gave out, holding her as she broke apart. "I've got you," he whispered. "I've got you, love. I'm here." She sobbed into his chest, grief pouring out of her in waves. She'd known it was coming. Had made the choice willingly, but that didn't make it hurt less. Her mother was alive but would never remember her. Would never call on Sundays, never ask about her life, never look at her with pride and love. That part of Zara's life was over, erased as completely as if it had never existed. "You have passed the third trial," King Aurelius said, his voice softer now. "You have proven you understand sacrifice. You are worthy of transformation." Zara barely heard him. She clung to Wolfram, letting him hold her, letting him be her anchor in the storm of grief. Finally, after what felt like hours, she pulled back, wiping her eyes. "When?" she asked hoarsely. "Now, if you wish," the king said. "Or you can take time to prepare yourself now," Zara said. "I want it to be now. I can't. I need something good to come from this. I need to not feel this way anymore." Wolfram cupped her face in his hands. "Are you sure? You've been through so much. You can rest first. Take time to—" "I'm sure," she said. "Turn me, Wolfram, make me yours, forever." He searched her eyes, looking for doubt, but found only determination and grief and love. Finally, he nodded. "I'll need privacy," he said to the council, "and time. The transformation is intimate and painful. She shouldn't have to go through it in front of an audience." King Aurelius stood. "Agreed. You will return to your quarters. The transformation must be completed by dawn. If she survives, both of you will be pardoned and released. If she doesn't survive—" "She'll survive," Wolfram said fiercely. "I'll make sure of it." They were escorted back to their rooms one final time. The moment the door closed behind them, Wolfram pulled Zara close again, holding her like she might disappear. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry about your mother. If I could change it, if I could give her back to you—" "I know," Zara said, "but this is the price. This is what it costs to be with you, and I'm paying it willingly because you're worth it. We're worth it." She pulled back, looked up at him. "Tell me what happens." In the transformation, Wolfram led her to the bed, sitting down and pulling her beside him. "I'll drink your blood first. Not all of it, but enough to bring you to the edge of death. Then you'll drink mine. The exchange creates the transformation. My blood will stop your heart, kill your human body. Then it will rebuild you as a vampire. The process takes several hours and is extremely painful. You'll feel like you're dying because you are, but I'll be with you the entire time. I won't leave you for a second. Will I remember who I was? After? Yes. You'll still be you, just more. Stronger, faster, sharper. Your senses will be overwhelming at first. You'll hear things from miles away, smell everything, see in the dark. And you'll be hungry. So hungry, but I'll help you through it. I'll teach you everything." Zara nodded, trying to absorb all of this. In a few hours she would be dead. Her human life would be over. She'd never feel warm again, never taste real food, never age another day. She'd be frozen at 23 forever. But she'd be with Wolfram. They'd have eternity. "I'm ready," she said. Wolfram kissed her then, soft and gentle, full of love and grief and promise. "I will spend the rest of forever making this up to you. I will give you everything I have, everything I am. You won't regret this, Zara, I swear it." "I know," she said. "I trust you." He laid her down on the bed, positioning her carefully, making sure she was comfortable. Then he lay beside her, propped on one elbow, looking down at her face. "Last chance," he said. "If you want to back out, we can still run. We can try to escape, find a way to—" "Wolfram," she interrupted. "I love you. Turn me." He closed his eyes for a moment, taking a breath he didn't need. Then he opened them, and they were different. His pupils had dilated, and she could see the predator in him now, the ancient hunger. "I love you too," he said. "More than anything." He bent to her throat and she felt his breath on her skin, cold and soft. Then his fangs pierced her flesh, and the world exploded into sensation. It didn't hurt the way she expected. There was a moment of sharp pain. Then warmth spread through her body, starting at her neck and radiating outward. She felt her blood flowing into him, felt the pull of it, and it was intimate in a way she hadn't anticipated. She could feel Wolfram's emotions through the connection, his love, his fear, his hunger carefully controlled. Her vision started to blur, her heartbeat slowing. She was dying. She could feel it, the life draining out of her with each pull of blood, but she wasn't scared. Wolfram was with her. She was safe. Finally he pulled back. His mouth was red with her blood, his eyes fierce. Now you drink, he said. He bit his own wrist, tearing the pale flesh, and dark blood welled up. He pressed it to her lips and she drank. The taste was strange, metallic and sweet and powerful. It burned going down and she felt it hit her stomach like fire. Then the pain started. It was worse than the first trial, worse than anything she'd ever experienced. Her body was shutting down, dying cell by cell and being rebuilt by Wolfram's blood. She felt her heart stutter, felt her lungs seize, felt every nerve in her body scream. She tried to cry out, but her throat wouldn't work. Wolfram was there, holding her hand, his face above hers. "Stay with me," he was saying. "I know it hurts, I know love, but you have to hold on, your body is changing. Let it happen, don't fight it." She couldn't have fought if she wanted to. The pain was everything, consuming her entire existence. She felt her human life slipping away, felt the girl she'd been dying. All her memories were still there, but they felt distant now, like they belonged to someone else. Time lost meaning. She might have been transforming for hours or days or seconds. There was only pain in Wolfram's voice and the feeling of her body remaking itself. Then suddenly, it stopped. The pain cut off like a switch, and Zara gasped, or tried to. Her lungs didn't move. Her heart was silent in her chest. She was dead, but she was also more alive than she'd ever been. She opened her eyes and the world was different. Everything was sharper, clearer, more vivid. She could see dust motes floating in the air, could count the threads in the tapestry across the room. She could hear Wolfram's unnecessary breathing, could hear the guards outside the door, could hear voices from floors away in the underground complex. And the smells, God, the smells. She could smell blood everywhere, pumping through veins, calling to her. Her stomach cramped with sudden, vicious hunger. "Easy," Wolfram said, his hand on her shoulder. "Easy, love, I know you're hungry. We'll feed soon. But first, tell me how you feel." Zara sat up slowly, marveling at how easy the movement was. The wounds from the first trial were gone, healed completely. Her broken finger was straight and whole. She looked at her hands and saw they were paler now, not quite as white as Wolfram's but no longer human pink. "I feel," she tried to find words, "strong. Everything is so clear, and I'm so hungry. That's normal. The hunger will be intense for the first few weeks, but you'll learn to control it. I'll teach you." He cupped her face, tilting it toward him, studying her eyes. "Your eyes are still hazel. Sometimes they change completely, but sometimes they stay the same. I'm glad. I love your eyes." Zara smiled, and she felt her fangs for the first time, sharp in her mouth. Wolfram smiled back, and she saw his own fangs, saw the joy and relief on his face. "You did it," he said. "You survived. You're vampire now, Zara. You're mine. Forever," she said. He kissed her. And it was different now. There was no temperature difference between them, no fragility he had to account for. He kissed her like an equal, like a partner, and she kissed him back with her new strength, her new hunger. A knock on the door interrupted them. "The dawn approaches," a voice called. "The king wishes to see you." They went to the council chamber one last time. The 12 vampires were there, watching as Zara and Wolfram entered. Zara could see them so much more clearly now, could see the power in them, the age, the predatory grace. She understood now what Wolfram had meant about becoming a predator. She could feel it in herself, the instinct to hunt, to feed, to survive. But she could also feel her humanity, still there beneath the surface. She was still Zara, just more than she had been. King Aurelius stood as they approached. "Zara Voss, you have completed the trials and survived the transformation. You are now vampire, bound by our laws and our ways. Do you accept this?" "I do," Zara said, her new voice stronger, clearer. "Then the council pardons both you and Wolfram Thorne for the breach of the first covenant. Your sentence is commuted. You are free to return to the surface and resume your lives, provided you maintain our secrecy and uphold our laws." "We will," Wolfram said. "There is one more matter," the king said. He looked at Wolfram. "You love this woman. You have proven it through your willingness to die for her, and she has proven her love for you through her sacrifice. Such devotion is rare even among our kind." He descended from his seat, approaching them. In his hand was a small box, ancient wood inlaid with silver. "This is a bonding token," Aurelius said. "In our oldest traditions, when two vampires choose each other as eternal partners, they exchange these. It is a promise, a binding of blood and soul. It cannot be broken except by true death. I offer it to you both, if you wish to accept." Wolfram looked stunned. "Your Majesty, we're honored, but we're not prepared for—" "I am," Zara interrupted. She looked at Wolfram, at the man, the vampire she'd endured torture and trials and transformation for. "I'm prepared if you are." Wolfram's face softened. "You just became a vampire hours ago. You should take time, experience your new existence, make sure this is what you really want." "I know what I want," Zara said. "I've known since the night you told me about your library being your sanctuary. I want you, Wolfram, for eternity." She saw him struggle with it. saw the war between his desire to protect her and his understanding that she was making her own choice. Finally, he nodded. Then yes, he said to the king, we accept. King Aurelius opened the box, revealing 2 silver rings carved with ancient symbols. He took Zara's hand first, sliding the ring onto her finger. It was cool against her skin and seemed to pulse with power. With this bond, you choose Wolfram Thorne as your eternal companion. Your blood recognizes his, your soul calls to his. Through the centuries, through darkness and light, you will stand together. Then he took Wolfram's hand, sliding the matching ring onto his finger. With this bond, you choose Zara Voss as your eternal companion. Your blood recognizes hers, your soul calls to hers. Through the centuries, through darkness and light, you will stand together. The moment both rings were in place, Zara felt something shift. A connection opened between her and Wolfram, warm and golden and permanent. She could feel his emotions, his love, his joy, his awe, and she knew he could feel hers. It is done, the king said. You are bonded. The council recognizes your union. Wolfram pulled Zara close, kissing her deeply, and the council applauded, the sound echoing through the chamber. Even Morgana was clapping, though she looked somewhat reluctant. As they broke apart, both smiling, King Aurelius leaned in close to speak softly, meant only for them. I pushed you both hard, harder than I've pushed any candidates before. But I needed to know you could survive what this life demands. I needed to know your love was real, not just infatuation or temporary passion. You've proven it, both of you. Be happy together. You've earned it. Zara felt a rush of gratitude toward the ancient vampire. Yes, the trials had been brutal, and losing her mother's memories would haunt her forever. But she'd gained something too. She'd gained Wolfram, gained immortality, gained a future that stretched out endlessly before her. They left the underground complex as the sun was rising above Manhattan. Zara felt the pull of sleep, the instinctive need to find darkness and rest. Wolfram led her through the hidden passages, up the spiral stairs, into the subway station that was their gateway between worlds. They took a car back to Wolfram's building, a luxury high-rise with blackout curtains in every room. As they entered his apartment, their apartment now, Zara looked around with new eyes. The library where they'd first worked together. The kitchen where he'd made her tea. The balcony where they'd stood in the rain. Welcome home, Wolfram said softly. Home, yes, this was home now. Not the apartment in Washington Heights where she'd lived as a human. Not her mother's house in Connecticut, which no longer held any connection to her. This was home because Wolfram was here. Show me, she said suddenly. Show me your world, our world. I want to see everything. He smiled, that rare, beautiful smile that made her chest ache. We have eternity, love. We'll see it all together. But first you need to rest. The first day after transformation is exhausting. He was right. She could feel weariness settling into her bones, the sun's presence above making her limbs heavy. They went to the bedroom and Wolfram pulled the blackout curtains closed, plunging the room into darkness that Zara could still see through perfectly. They lay down together and she curled into him, feeling the coolness of his body match her own now. No more temperature difference, no more fragility. They were equals, partners, bonded for eternity. I love you, she whispered. I love you too, he said. My brave, impossible, beautiful Zara. You changed everything for me. You gave me hope when I thought I'd lost it forever. You gave me a reason to exist beyond simple survival. I will spend the rest of forever proving myself worthy of what you sacrificed for me. You're already worthy, she said. You were always worthy. They fell asleep as the sun climbed higher, 2 vampires in their sanctuary, safe and together and whole. When Zara woke the next evening, the hunger was the first thing she noticed. It was intense, demanding, impossible to ignore. Wolfram was already awake, watching her with understanding eyes. Time for your first feeding, he said. We'll go to one of the sanctioned donor houses. They're humans who provide blood safely, voluntarily. You'll learn to control yourself there. Over the next weeks, Wolfram taught her everything. How to feed without killing. How to move through the world as a vampire, using her speed and strength subtly so humans wouldn't notice. How to navigate vampire society with its complex hierarchies and ancient politics. How to hunt when necessary, how to fight, how to survive. Zara was a quick learner, adapting to her new existence with the same determination that had carried her through the trials. The hunger became manageable. The heightened senses became normal. She learned to sleep through the day and thrive at night. She also returned to her research, but with a new perspective. Now she could access vampire archives that had been hidden from human scholars. She could read accounts written by vampires who had lived through the events they described. Her dissertation on medieval European history became something far more comprehensive and accurate than any human could have written. Wolfram introduced her to other vampires. friends he'd made over the centuries. She met warriors and scholars, artists and politicians. She learned that vampire society was vast and varied, full of individuals with their own personalities and goals, not just the monsters of legend. But she also learned about the darkness, about vampires who killed indiscriminately, who viewed humans as nothing but food, about the rogues who rejected the laws and structures of vampire society, about the hunters who sought to eradicate all vampires, human and vampire alike existing in an ancient bloody conflict. And she learned about the rogue nest in Red Hook. True to his word, Wolfram brought his evidence to the council, and a team was dispatched to deal with the threat. Zara insisted on going with them, and though Wolfram was reluctant, he couldn't deny her the right to participate. She was vampire now, and she could fight. The battle was brief but brutal. 12 rogues had been creating an army of turned vampires, planning to expose their existence and start a war with humanity. Zara fought alongside Wolfram, using her new speed and strength, discovering a warrior's instinct she hadn't known she possessed. They won. The rogues were destroyed, their newly turned victims either rehabilitated or given merciful deaths. The vampire world remained secret. Balance was maintained. Months passed, then years. Zara's human life faded to memory, and her vampire existence became reality. She published papers under a false identity, contributed to scholarship, continued learning. Wolfram taught her languages she'd only read in books: medieval Latin, Old French, German dialects that no longer existed. They traveled together, visiting the places he'd lived over the centuries, creating new memories to layer over the old. And through it all, they loved each other. The bond between them grew stronger, deeper, more intricate. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's needs and fears and joys. They fought sometimes, disagreed, challenged each other. But they always came back together, always chose each other. 10 years after her transformation, Zara stood on Wolfram's balcony, their balcony, watching the city lights sparkle below. New York had changed even in the short time she'd been vampire. Buildings rose higher, technology advanced, humanity surged forward in its relentless march toward the future. But some things remained constant. The moon still rose every night. Blood still sustained them. Love still mattered. Wolfram came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "My mother," Zara said quietly. It still hurt, even after all these years. She'd looked her up once, unable to help herself. Rebecca Voss had gone on with her life, never knowing she'd had a daughter. She'd remarried, seemed happy. The vampire's memory erasure had been complete. "I'm sorry," Wolfram said, as he always did when she mentioned her mother. "I know, but I'd make the same choice again. For you, I'd make any choice. Even now? After you've seen what this life really means?" Zara turned in his arms, looking up at his face, at the features she knew better than her own now. White hair she'd braided countless times. Storm gray eyes that saw through her defenses. The mouth that kissed her and spoke to her and smiled at her terrible jokes. "Especially now," she said, "because I know what we have, I know what we are to each other, and that's worth any price." He kissed her then, deep and slow, and she tasted eternity in that kiss. Centuries stretched ahead of them, full of unknowns and dangers and wonders, but they would face all of it together. The council had voted to end him, but she had stood against them. She had endured torture and hunger and sacrifice. She had given up her humanity, her mother, her mortal future, and in return she had gained everything that mattered. She had gained love. She had gained Wolfram. She had gained forever. And as they stood together on that balcony, two vampires against the endless night, Zara knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. The only choice, because some loves were worth dying for, and some loves were worth living for. This was both.